This is the morning of Lucy Letby's arrest.
Oh, Lucy, is it?
Yes.
I won't mind. In chest, please. So, give Stefan 2 seconds.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
The smile's gone, and she's in handcuffs a few minutes later.
Not a problem.
A nurse who murdered babies, Lucy Letby has always denied and never explained.
I'm going to put you in the back seat over here.
Now guilty of using her job to kill again and again.
Just take a seat in there for me, Lucy. I'll move that seat forward a bit. Sure. It was just had knee surgery. Oh, right, okay.
Lucy Letby was entrusted to protect some of the most vulnerable babies. Innocuous substances like air, milk, or medication like insulin would become lethal. She perverted her learning and weaponized her craft to inflict harm, grief, and death.
How would you describe the crimes of Lucy Letby?
Horrible, horrific, and evil.
We're talking about tiny babies in a setting where they should have been really safe.
That setting was the neonatal unit where Lucy Letby worked. Her victims were the very definition of defenceless.
I said, "Oh my God, what happened?" And the doctor was giving compressions to baby M. I was just praying to God, saying, "What has happened to my child?"
I saw doctors around the trolley and they're just pumping his heart like a rag doll, really. The image that I saw was just horrendous. That image I'll never forget because it's on the brain.
Their words have been revoiced because, like all the families in this case, a court order gives these parents anonymity. Their twin boys, known as babies L and M, were just a day old when Lucy Letby tried to kill them. They both survived, but it took almost 30 minutes to restart baby M's heart. Experts say the crash was likely caused by air being injected into his bloodstream. His brother was poisoned with insulin, though their parents weren't told that for 2 years.
We didn't know anything even afterwards until the police came knocking.
She was very cool, calm, calculated, and a criminal-minded lady.
Just an evil person. If they'd acted upon the initial suspicions, it would have prevented multiple deaths, really. There's no way she should have been able to get away with it for so long.
One of those raising concerns at the hospital was Dr. John Gibbs.
We paediatricians were certainly concerned that someone, and suspicions fell on Lucy Letby, could have been harming and perhaps killing patients on the unit. If they just listened to us hospital paediatricians, I think the police would have been called in a lot earlier.
Before he retired, Dr. Gibbs worked with Lucy Letby. They're next to each other in a fundraising photo from 2015. That same year, suspicions began, when the neonatal death rate doubled and doctors noticed a common factor: Lucy Letby. Hospital managers were told and meetings were held, but until the following summer, the nurse was still working on the neonatal unit. Those events in the summer of 2016, in particular, 2 deaths on consecutive days. What was it like being there?
It was a worrying time because suspicions and concerns had been growing. And then in June 2016, there were several deaths in very quick succession. We were expecting them to go home, and suddenly, one after another, they died. And that really worried us. And at that point, we felt something drastic had to be done to protect the babies on the unit.
Those events have been described as a tipping point. The 2 babies who died one day after another were identical triplets, and Dr. Gibbs and the other consultants could find no medical reason for what happened. So after months raising their concerns, they now insisted on Lucy Letby's removal from the neonatal unit. She was shifted into an office job in the patient safety department. But 11 more months went by before hospital managers called in the police. During those months, senior managers repeatedly tried to move Lucy Letby back to the neonatal unit. Dr. Gibbs and the other paediatricians kept refusing and saying police should be involved. Why did it then take so long for the police to be called in?
Well, I think there was resistance on the senior management side to involving the police, but I don't know quite why, and really the senior managers ought to be asked.
Why wait to tell police is just one of the serious questions, but as of yet, the Countess of Chester Hospital has not given answers. Instead, a video statement was recorded after the verdicts.
Extremely sorry that these crimes were committed at our hospital. Since Lucy Letby worked at our hospital, we have made significant changes to our services. And I want to provide reassurance to every patient that may access our services that they can have confidence in the care that they will receive. Finally, and most importantly, our thoughts are with all the families and loved ones at this very difficult time. Thank you.
Dr. Swan, I have to ask, why did hospital managers try to stop Lucy Letby from being investigated?
Once police were told, their investigation became a multiple murder inquiry. When police arrested Lucy Letby and searched her home, they found hospital records stored in shopping bags under her bed. Some included the names of babies she'd killed. It's thought she kept them as a kind of trophy. On a phone they seized, there were photos of the handwritten message and a card the nurse sent to the family of a baby girl she'd murdered. She signed it, "Lots of love, Lucy." And in her diary, along with dates for salsa dancing classes, there were initials of some of her victims written on the days when they died. Tucked inside was a post-it note filled with words and phrases, including, "I am evil, I did this." There was no confession to police, though.
They told me there would be a lot more deaths and that I'd been linked to somebody that was there for a lot of them.
Did you have any concerns that there was a rise in the mortality rate?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me about that. What concerns did you have?
I think we'd all just noticed as a team in general, the nursing staff, that this was a rise compared to previous years.
After Lucy Letby's long trial, she refused to be in court at the end. The verdicts do, though, give the parents of her victims answers to some of their questions, though not all.
Definitely. A public inquiry. The higher management, they need to be held accountable. The doctors raised their concerns and they didn't act upon them. They dismissed them. It's hard to put into words just how it could have gone on so long, why it went on so long. We have to wait for the hospital to answer those questions, but it could have been stopped. That's the fact.
In a 12-month period, Lucy Letby murdered 7 babies and tried to murder another 6. Some who survived have been left with permanent brain injuries. We now know police are checking more medical records. More families have been told what happened to their child is being looked into. The question the detective leading the investigation is trying to answer: did Lucy Letby kill or harm more children? This investigation is ongoing for you, isn't it?
Yes. So, yes, it is. You know, we've got to look at it and think, right, okay, what would be the right thing to do? And that is to investigate all of the time period that Lucy Letby has been employed as a nurse, both at the Countess and whilst on placement at the Liverpool Women's Hospital. So we're looking currently at every admission of a neonatal infant during that period.
That must be thousands of babies.
It's over 4,000 babies. It's unfair at this point to speculate on where that will go.
6 years after police began investigating the deaths of babies at this hospital, there are still unknowns. Who is Lucy Letby remains easier to answer than why she did what she did.
I would describe her as a person as being beige. She was unremarkable as a nurse. She had a normal friendship group, a family. She had a normal social life, everything you would expect somebody in their 20s to do. She was operating in plain sight because she was so normal. I think it's so hard to fathom how somebody in such a position of trust could commit these offences, the question of why is almost it's too difficult to even, there isn't anything that's reasonable. There is no reasonable explanation, and I don't think I'll ever understand or accept why.
This trial is believed to have been the longest murder trial in British legal history. The jury deliberated for more than 100 hours. And in fact, the verdicts have been coming back over a number of days now. We couldn't report them because of restrictions imposed by the judge until the final verdicts reached by this jury had been returned. And I was watching Lucy Letby for any reaction as those verdicts came back. As some were read out, she cried. On another occasion, she was looking down, there seemed to be no emotion, and then after that, she started to refuse to come to court. We heard from one of the parents in my report there saying that there does need to be a public inquiry. An inquiry has been announced today, but not a public inquiry, meaning it wouldn't have the same legal powers. It couldn't compel witnesses to give evidence, and some do see that as a problem in terms of both answers and accountability.
Claire Fallon. Well, by the time police were called in by the hospital, senior doctors had been raising concerns for well over a year, and there had been several reviews into what they were calling a cluster of deaths. By the end of June 2015, an association between Lucy Letby and the death of 3 babies had been identified. Soon after, that link was raised in a meeting with the hospital executive. In February 2016, a specialist from another hospital was brought in to carry out a review. The deaths of 2 identical triplets in June 2016 were described as exceptional and unexplained when investigated internally. Lucy Letby was the common factor again. She was moved to a desk job. And the neonatal unit was downgraded, meaning they no longer cared for the most at-risk babies. The hospital ordered 2 more independent reviews before finally police were asked to investigate in May 2017. Well, ministers have ordered an independent inquiry into the circumstances behind Letby's crimes, including the way concerns were raised by hospital staff were handled.
This is one of the really shocking things that happened is, as you say, that doctors repeatedly raised their concerns, and that didn't lead to the action being taken that you would have expected. This is one of the things that clearly the inquiry, I think, should look into.
Well, the City of Chester MP, Samantha Dixon, joins me now. Each one of these deaths was treated as a tragedy at the time, and they would have had a terrible impact at the time that they happened. What do you think will now be the impact as the community realises that these weren't just tragedies, these were deliberate murders from a serial killer?
I think they would share the grief of the families that are involved. I think that the decision to harm a child is one of the most depraved acts that somebody can commit, and to actually kill a child is unimaginable. And I think that most people in this city will actually be standing alongside these families in their grief and their sorrow.
And I'm sure that will be nationwide, but what people have also discovered today is the background to this and what happened as doctors tried to raise the alarm with the hospital management. What do you make of what you've heard today, and what do you think the people who are supposed to be served by that hospital will think?
Well, as soon as the verdicts came in this afternoon, I wrote to the Secretary of State, Steve Barclay, and requested a full independent and public inquiry into the circumstances around Letby's crimes. I'm pleased that he's replied to me. He's issued a statement saying that there will be an inquiry and that it will be quick and it will be flexible. I do think, however, that wider questions have emerged today from staff who were involved at the time about the response of the organisation that need to be addressed. And I think a full public inquiry is the way to do that.
So you want this inquiry to be upgraded, do you, to a statutory public inquiry with the ability to compel witnesses to come forward and to give evidence on oath?
I think everybody needs the answers, and I think if that's the way forward, then that's what we'll need. I have written back to the Health Secretary to ask him why the decision has been taken to make it a non-statutory inquiry, and I wait to hear what the rationale is behind that decision. But I really do feel that the community here in Chester and more widely across the country want to hear answers and want to understand why these circumstances were allowed to take place.
Do you think that statement today and the failure to answer any questions by the hospital was acceptable? Was it adequate?
I think that there are wider questions. I think an inquiry is the way to deal with them. I think that there are many questions that have arisen as the aftermath of the verdict has come forward. I think it needs to be dealt with quickly, and I think that the organisation is going to have a lot of answers to provide to the wider community, and actually the NHS as a whole needs to consider its response to these heinous crimes.
Because the trouble is, of course, there have been killers in hospitals before, in the health service before, and there have been inquiries, and each case is slightly different, and so the actions after those inquiries perhaps haven't quite caught the next one. I mean, how do you think you can actually take the steps needed now, after this particularly shocking set of crimes, to tackle this and to stop it happening again? Do you think that's possible?
I hope so. I mean, I really do, for the community that I represent who are served by this local hospital. I think anybody living in this city, living in this wider community, needs to know that this hospital is a safe place for them to be treated in. And I think that a full public inquiry that's held independently can establish that for the residents that I represent.
And just finally, do you have confidence in that hospital right now? Do you think people can be confident in going there and feeling safe?
I think that the clinical staff who acted in the way that they did and have described how they took forward the suspicions that they had should give people confidence that there are staff in that hospital working hard and in the best interests of the patients that they serve, day in, day out.
Samantha Dixon, thank you very much. No.
Well, speaking outside court today, Cheshire Constabulary paid tribute to the exceptional strength shown by families during the investigation and read a statement on their behalf.
This has been a long and emotional journey for all of the families involved in this case. I speak on behalf of the entire prosecution team when I say that all of their babies will forever be in our hearts. I would like to thank all of the families in this case for their exceptional resilience and strength throughout this entire investigation. Their composure and their dignity during this trial has been truly overwhelming. I cannot begin to imagine how the families in this case feel today. I just hope that today's verdicts bring all of them some peace of mind for the future, and that we have answered some of the questions that they were looking for.
Words cannot effectively explain how we are feeling at this moment in time. We are quite simply stunned. To lose a baby is a heartbreaking experience that no parent should ever have to go through. But to lose a baby, or to have a baby harmed in these particular circumstances, is unimaginable. Over the past 7 to 8 years, we've had to go through a long, torturous and emotional journey. From losing our precious newborns and grieving their loss, seeing our children who survived, some of whom are still suffering today, to being told years later that their death or collapse might be suspicious. Nothing can prepare you for that news. Today, justice has been served, and a nurse who should have been caring for our babies has been found guilty of harming them. But this justice will not take away from the extreme hurt, anger and distress that we've all had to experience. Some families did not receive the verdict that they expected, and therefore it is a bittersweet result. We are heartbroken, devastated, angry and feel numb. We may never truly know why this happened.